Look at me. And we are live for our final live stream of today. But don't worry, there's a lot more tomorrow because there's a lot of smart people here, folks. So if you've been with us throughout the entire day, thank you so much for joining us. We've had a lot of fun bringing you one after another of engaging people. We've been laughing, we've been just shaking our heads in bewilderment at all the cool stuff that's happened here at Enterprise Connect. Best of all, you can check out every single one of those interviews at either enterpriseconnect.com or you can check out it at nojitter.com, both conveniently located on the branding behind us. So check that out. Right now, to wrap it up, did we save the best to last?
We did save the best for last.
All right, I like that. Zeus Kavalali, how you doing, Zeus?
Good, I'm doing great.
All right, Zeus is with ZK Research. For our audience, Zeus, maybe tell us a little bit about what ZK Research is all about.
Sure, so I spent 10 years as a Yankee Group analyst. And
Yankee Group.
So I learned a lot there, obviously.
Yep.
And the fundamental premise of my research is that significant market share changes happen at moments of market transition.
Yep.
So if things don't change, customers don't buy things from new vendors, right? They have their favorite vendor and they buy, right? And so I tend to focus on technologies that are emerging that customers really struggle with. Who should I look at? What should I buy? You know, when a market matures and it becomes more an exercise of box counting, then I turn that over to the Synergies and IDCs. Well, in fact, Synergy and I partner together. I use a lot of their market data. They do that a whole lot better job than I do. So I try and stay out in front of the market, and I look at a lot of the emerging technologies, ones that enable digital transformations. Certainly unified communications would fall in there. A lot of the team collaboration tools, Internet of Things, cloud, and those trends. And for customers, they're really struggling with a lot of those right now because it's not the status quo, right? Everything's up in the air, everything's different, and they're struggling with trying to figure out how to shift their IT strategy around that.
One of the biggest things we've heard today in all the interviews is how for years the space was somewhat stable and mature.
Yeah.
Boring is another word.
Yeah.
I've heard a few other descriptives that are engaging, shall we say, and yet that seems to have gone out the window, and for sure this year, and it's been building up to it. We're seeing this whole mass emergence of new players, non-traditional players, innovative technology. Were you staying out in front of that?
Yeah, well, I think part of the reason for that is just collaboration is a lot more important. If you look at digital trends, right, the sustainable market leadership in the digital era isn't based on who has the best product. It may be for a little while, but not sustainable. Who has the cheapest prices or even has the best people. It's based on an organization's ability to make the best decision with the right people in as short a time as possible. And so that's raised the value of collaboration, right? And the whole market concept, the concept of collaboration is expanded. It used to be at the show primarily voice communications, a little bit of video, audio conferencing, then we had a web conferencing, but now it includes document sharing, it includes whiteboarding, it includes mobile applications. And so the reason the ecosystem at the show's gotten bigger is because the market's expanded, because companies need better ways to enable workers to be more agile and to communicate better. And I think it's tremendous because as you bring more of these companies in, you create more pressure on the market leaders, and that drives innovation across that entire stack.
So let me ask this question. If this part of the business, of the organization, has been somewhat mature for a period of time, with all this innovation that's now coming down upon us, are the organizations ready for that?
That's a good question. I think the lines of business want it. I think they understand that changing the way customers are serviced, changing the way employees work and interact with each other is a necessary thing to do.
Right.
I think when you bring it down to the IT level, I'm not so sure they're ready for it. I think the fundamental way we operate things, we're moving things to the cloud, we're automating more processes, that's put the fear of God into a lot of IT people. And I think we're going to see a change over the next few years where a lot of the skill sets required to run IT organizations moves away from racking, stacking, configuring, maintenance, more to orchestration capabilities, programming, even understanding business processes and being able to, in fact, if you looked at Cisco's keynote today, that was as much about workflow and how to optimize it from the beginning of a meeting to the end of it, on both ends, more so than it actually was about the product, right? And they're trying to own the workflow, and I think that's where IT really struggles, because there's been this big disconnect between IT and lines of business. But that tide is changing, and some companies are out in front of it, and some are lagging, and that's the way things evolve.
Are you seeing the lines of business really kind of almost push the agenda, or almost bring that in on their own?
Well, that's the risk, right? And there has been a lot of that. In fact, I've interviewed a bunch of customers this year that have had digital initiatives to improve customer experience. In fact, I interviewed somebody at a stadium, and they've improved the fan experience there by connecting everything, right?
Sure.
So they have digital signs, things, and that wasn't driven by IT. That was a line of business initiative that understood they had to improve the fan experience, and they went ahead and really drove that initiative. And so some things are being driven by HR for employee retention, some are being driven by digital officers, things like that. IT generally gets involved, but I'm seeing a lot more line of business involvement in pushing that agenda. And in a lot of cases, even the facilities people are operational, when you talk about Internet of Things, companies are just connecting more things, and IT's having to adapt. And it's tough. I mean, I'm a former IT person myself, and
you get it.
It's a much more complicated world today than it ever has been.
And the skill sets you need in that role have changed dramatically. It's not just technology. You have to understand the business processes and the business issues as well. Yeah,
I do a lot of work with IT people, and I counsel them on this because it's very important, I think. When you look at the shifts we've had throughout history, right, and look at this example in this market, for example, when we went from TDM to voice over IP, a lot of the people that ran the TDM systems aren't working today.
That's right.
Because they weren't willing to make that shift.
They couldn't shift.
Right. In fact, when I started my career as a Windows Unix person in a world of mainframes, and the company I started with, we had like 200 mainframe people. I was one of 5 Windows people. And within 2 years, all the mainframe people were gone because they couldn't make the shift. And so there's 2 approaches to IT. I can stick my head in the sand and say, I want to do what I always did. The other one's to try and get out in front of this technology shifts. And I think it's really important they do that because from just a career longevity perspective, the world is changing. It's becoming more dynamic and more distributed, and we can't do things the old way or our companies are going to fall behind.
All right. You, yesterday, co-moderated the general session on communications APIs.
I did.
All right. So for our audience, what are those and why do they matter?
Yeah, that's a good question because a lot of our audience doesn't really get the concept of what a communications API is, right? So think of what's happened to the PBX. We took the PBX and we converted it to IP.
Yep.
Then we took it and pushed it into the cloud. And so when I sign up for service with the UCaaS provider, what I'm buying is full PBX functionality out of the cloud. Now, what if I don't want full PBX functionality? What if I'm a mobile app developer and all I want to do is build click-to-call into an application, or click-to-chat, or messaging, or click-to-video? Well, what communications APIs let me do is modularize that PBX and buy just those components, right? So now if I want to build a mobile app, perhaps something like an Uber app where I want my driver to be able to communicate with the passenger, keep it anonymous, I don't have to buy a full PBX and rack and stack it and support and maintain it. I simply just make a call to the cloud. So these communications APIs allow developers to have access to very specific communications functions that they can quickly build into apps, pay for by utilization, and then be able to have that up and running in a matter of minutes. And so I've talked to developers that have lived in the old world, when you had to have a lot of CTI knowledge, you had to rack and stack equipment. What used to take months to do literally takes minutes to do today.
And that's pervasive not just across the communication side, but even Internet of Things. We're seeing a lot of the exact same thing happen right now, right?
Yeah, in fact, I think IoT is a great use case for the communications APIs because it may be, imagine if you're in a hospital and you want to hook up patient monitors to be able to message people.
Yeah.
You're not going to want to buy a full PBX, IP PBX, and have to build all those hooks in. You can just the monitor can just make calls to the cloud, right, and send those messages out to maybe a team messaging platform or something like that. So it greatly simplifies and speeds up application development, and again, in this digital world, speeds the new currency of business, right?
It's totally, all right. So now you also presented on the cloud. You mentioned the cloud. You also presented in the cloud as part of the 2020 program. I think it was yesterday you did that?
Correct. Yeah.
All right. So in your opinion, where do you think the enterprise communications will be with regard to the cloud specifically in 3 years, in the year 2020?
Yeah, my presentation, I tried to get out in front of this and be a little more visionary.
Yep.
And it's been my thesis that the first wave of any technology transition is really about making the new stuff look like the old stuff, right?
Which makes sense.
So think about when we went from PBXs to IPPBXs.
Yeah.
We didn't change anything. We just took out a PBX and put it in IPPX. We changed the transport that it ran over. Yeah. But essentially, users picked up the phone and made calls.
Yeah, right? Nothing hadn't changed for them.
Right. And then we moved it to the cloud, but we just picked up the phone and moved calls. Right.
Right.
And we're moving into, I think we're in the middle of wave 2 of PBX, of the cloud, where what the cloud's enabling us to do is what I think of as multi-screen or multi-device mobility, or if you want to call it that, where think of iTunes, for example. When I buy a song on iTunes, I can download it to my watch.
Yep.
I can download it to my phone, my tablet, my computer. So I no longer have to worry about, do I have all my content locally?
Right.
Right. But still, as a user, I need to go look for that content, right? I think the next wave of cloud, and we'll get there, we'll start seeing this by 2020, the cloud will become much more predictive in nature, and it'll be driven by contextual information and analytics and machine learning.
Yeah.
So the cloud will collect all this data, it'll process it through some machine learning algorithm, it'll figure out what we want to do even before we know it,
yep.
and then it'll push the information to us. So it'll give you a very basic example. If you use Waze today and you're using Google Mail, you can be sitting there at your desk and it'll pop up a message that says, based on current traffic, you should leave for the airport right now.
It's go.
Right. So how does it know that?
Yeah.
Well, it knows it because it studies the traffic patterns. It knows it's in my calendar. It knows my route. And so it applies a little bit of machine learning and says, hey, leave for the airport.
Yeah.
Right? An interesting corporate example would be that, let's say you wanted to put a team of people together to study oil and gas in the Middle East. And let's say you work for a company with 100,000 people. Well, how do you find the 10 best people? You may know a couple of them.
Right.
But if your AI, if you can ask through your speech interface, your favorite AI, hey, whoever, I need a team of people to do that, it can actually go look through all email sent, all documents written, perhaps blog posts, tweets, and select the right people. In fact, you could apply Myers-Briggs to it and actually use personality.
Right, based on the intended audience versus the people you've got on the team.
To put together a team. And so I think what the cloud becomes is an engine that holds a bunch of context, understands what it is we're trying to do, and pushes information to us. And you're seeing little snippets of it today. You know, for instance, with Microsoft, you use their suite. If I send you an email saying, hey, I'll get back to you by Friday, right? It'll put a calendar, it'll look in my email, see I said that, and put a reminder in my calendar that says, you know, send so-and-so a message by Friday.
Right.
Right. And so, again, it's a lot more intelligence there. And so the cloud, and the reason this is important, right, is because if the first wave of cloud was to do what we did before, but a little bit cheaper, but not really change the way we work, we need to start thinking about what can the cloud do for us that we couldn't do before.
Right.
And that's when you really see the adoption take off.
All right.
And that's really exciting.
Well, that part I could actually talk to you about for a long time because the possibilities are huge. And I'm seeing
tremendous.
We've had this conversation with some of the other people throughout the day about just almost the emergence of the collaboration with the communications, with the artificial intelligence, with the Internet of Things. And you know, on more than one occasion, I've only done it once today, but I wanted to use the term Skynet because we are almost getting to that point, right?
We are getting to that point.
And I was joking with the individual I interviewed before you, that we could just let our bots schedule the meetings for us and then have the meeting for us and tell us what the outcome of that meeting was. Well, he and I are enjoying a pint at the reception tonight. So, you know, it's amazing how times are changing.
Yeah, well, and that's the point of the technology, to make our lives easier, right?
It is true.
And I've always said there's one basic rule of thumb that everybody should apply to technology decisions. If the solution to a problem is more complicated than the original problem, don't do that thing.
Right.
Right, but frankly, that's often what we do in this industry, is we bring in solutions and all of a sudden I'm managing 10 different platforms and I'm trying to move information from one to another.
How do we get here?
Yeah, and all that's going to change.
Last question for you. I know you got to get going. You're doing another session. You're like the session king, it seems.
I am the session king.
On SD-WAN. And I'm hearing it over and over again from every other interview I'm doing today. So for our audience who missed those interviews, why is it important? What is it? Why is it important?
SD-WAN is an interesting transition because it's the first time in decades that we've actually changed our WAN architecture.
Yep.
That being the wide area network that connects our branch offices. In fact, prior to being an analyst, I told you I was at Yankee Group, but before that I was in IT. And so in the mid-90s, we used to sit around and talk about WAN transformation because the architecture of a WAN really wasn't very good. It was very inefficient. It's built on something called active-passive technology where you have two links connected to a branch and only the primary can be active. Now, think about the implication of that. Let's say I said to you as a road engineer, I want you to build a road system that goes from San Jose to San Francisco.
Okay.
Right, and so now we've got 101, 280. I don't know if you've been out there. You can take the East Bay and go up 880, right?
Yep.
Now, what if the caveat I put on you was you can only use one road, and if the primary road fails, then you can use another road.
Right.
You would have to build a road so big to accommodate all the traffic, and then you would have to build each alternate path so big to accommodate all the traffic that it would be completely wasteful, but that's the norm in networking.
Right.
And the other problem with traditional networking is that things are done manually on a box-by-box basis. So I want to make a change to my network. I got 100 sites. I log into 100 routers, and I make 100 different changes, which is the reason why the #1 cause of downtime today is from human error. 35% of downtime is people making mistakes on their network because they're in a rush and they're trying to do things. Right. So what an SD-WAN does is a fundamentally different way to run a network. At first, from a technical perspective, it separates the control plane and the data plane. And that's just a fancy way of saying I'm extracting the control function from the box itself, I'm moving it to software, and I'm centralizing it so I can configure one change and push it out to all my devices. Even better, because it has northbound APIs, it can talk to applications. So let's say I want to do a video call from one branch to another. Well, why can't the video system make an API call down to the network, say create me a dedicated pipe between those two, have my video call, and when it's over, tear down the pipe, right? No IT involvement needed at all, great quality, right? And the user had no idea. And so what an SD-WAN does is it automates a lot of the things that we do manually today, makes the network much more efficient. And I'll leave you with this. When you think about digital transformation, it's predicated on business being agile, but you're only as agile as your least agile component. And companies have spent billions of dollars on cloud, flash storage, containers, virtualization, but the network has stood still. Right. So if companies are going to maximize the investments they've made in these other areas, it's now time for the network to evolve, and that is really what SD-WAN's doing.
Fantastic. All right, that is Zeus Kavalali. He is with ZK Research. You can check him out. He is, like, as we said, the moderating session king. He's all over the place.
Find him on Twitter.
Is there a website?
There is. ZKresearch.com.
That is so
tricky.
Cryptic. I never would have saw that one coming.
And Twitter is at ZKeravala. And you'll learn a lot about Star Trek and tech stuff, which is really the same thing.
It is all the same thing. Zeus, thank you so much for your time today. All right. That's it, folks. We're back. We're done today, but we're back tomorrow. Thanks for staying with us and going throughout the day. We hope you've had as much fun as we've had. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.